Lieutenant Sarah Chen stared at her sensor display aboard the UES Hawking, watching the blue dot that represented Neptune slowly rotate. Another routine patrol in the outer solar system, another 12 hours of watching ice crystals dance in the gas giant's storms. She took a sip of her now-cold coffee and grimaced. "Contact," her sensor officer shouted. 3 signatures, bearing 040, moving fast. Chen straightened in her command chair. "Classification: unknown, sir. Configuration doesn't match anything in our database." Wait. The officer's voice trailed off as new data scrolled across his screen. Energy spike. Purple fire bloomed in the void. Where 3 Earth ships had been patrolling moments before, there was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. Chen's training kicked in as her mind processed the impossible scene before her. Battle stations, all hands, combat positions, the Hawking's corridors filled with the shrill cry of alarm klaxons. Tactical: get me everything you can on those ships. Communications: alert fleet command. The enemy vessels shimmered into view, crystalline structures that seemed to bend space around them. They moved with impossible grace, appearing and disappearing like deadly mirages. The Hawking's weapon systems couldn't get a lock. Multiple targets emerging from FTL, her tactical officer called out. "They're launching fighters." Chen's mind raced. Their weapons were useless, their shields worthless against the enemy's advanced technology. But they had one advantage. They were in Neptune's orbit, and she'd spent years studying its storms. "Helm, plot course directly into the Great Dark Spot," she ordered. Her bridge crew looked at her like she'd lost her mind. The Dark Spot was a massive storm system that could tear their ship apart. "Sir, that's suicide. Those storms interfere with our own sensors," Chen explained quickly. "Might do the same to theirs. We need intelligence on their capabilities more than we need another dead ship. Take us in." The Hawking plunged into Neptune's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed as the ship's hull groaned under the strain. Behind them, the alien vessels followed, their crystalline forms distorted by the storm's fury. Chen watched her displays as the ship's sensors recorded everything. Weapon signatures, shield frequencies, communication patterns. The enemy's superior technology meant nothing if they couldn't track their target through Neptune's electromagnetic chaos. "Hull breach on Deck 4. Engineering reported. We can't take much more of this." "Just a few more seconds," Chen muttered, watching the data stream in. A violent shudder ran through the ship. Now, emergency ascent. The Hawking clawed its way out of Neptune's atmosphere, systems failing across all decks. But they had what they needed: crucial data on an enemy that had appeared from nowhere to attack humanity. They limped back to Earth, their ship barely holding together. Chen's actions had cost them the Hawking, but the intelligence they gathered would save countless lives in the coming war. Within hours of their return, she found herself in front of Fleet Command, explaining everything they'd learned. Her field promotion to Admiral came 3 days later, along with command of the hastily assembled United Space Fleet. Humanity needed leaders who could think creatively against an overwhelming force. The brass had seen something in her actions at Neptune, a willingness to take calculated risks, to use apparent suicide missions to gain strategic advantages. But victory felt hollow 2 weeks later, as Chen stood in Fleet Command's observation room, watching live feeds from Mars. The Arcturi, as they now knew the crystalline ship's masters were called, had launched a massive assault on humanity's largest colony. New Mars colony was home to 20 million people, Chen's sister and nephew among them. The defense fleet was overwhelmed in minutes, their weapons barely scratching the alien vessels. Emergency transmissions filled the command channels, desperate calls for help, final messages to loved ones, the screams of the dying. Then, in a flash of that same purple fire, New Mars colony disappeared. Not just destroyed. The entire settlement, along with a chunk of Mars' surface, vanished into some kind of dimensional rift. 20 million lives, gone in an instant. Chen stood rigid, her face a mask of composure as inside, her heart shattered. Her sister's last message still played in her mind. "Sarah, they're everywhere. Take care of yourself. Don't let Earth be next." She turned to her assembled staff, her voice steady despite the horror they'd just witnessed. "As of this moment, we are at war. I don't care if their technology is centuries ahead of ours. I don't care if they can make our ships disappear with a thought. They just showed us what defeat means. And humanity. We don't do defeat." Her words echoed through the command center, setting the tone for the conflict to come. The Arcturi had made a crucial mistake. They'd given humanity something it had never had before, a common enemy. And in doing so, they'd learned why Earth's children had survived every catastrophe their harsh cradle had thrown at them. The war for survival had begun, but Sarah Chin had already started planning for victory. Lieutenant James O'Neill couldn't shake the feeling he'd seen these patterns before. He sat in the dimly lit analysis room, watching combat footage for the 100th time. The Arcturi ships moved with deadly precision, but there was something familiar about their maneuvers. "Computer, overlay tactical prediction grid alpha," he commanded. The holographic display shifted, adding movement vectors to the alien vessels. That's when it hit him. "Holy shit," he whispered. "They're using game logic." 20 years of competitive gaming hadn't prepared O'Neill for actual space combat, or so his instructors had said. But watching the Arcturi ships, he recognized the same patterns he'd seen in advanced AI opponents. Perfect, precise, predictable. He grabbed his tablet and ran to Dr. Sarah Wong's lab. The AI researcher had been quietly working on neural interface systems before the war. Now she was supposed to be analyzing Arcturi communication patterns. Instead, she was writing code that would definitely get her court-martialed. "They move like NPCs," O'Neill burst out as he entered her lab. Wong didn't look up from her screens. "Took you long enough to notice. Their tactical systems run on similar principles to our most advanced game AI, just scaled up about 1,000 times. Can we use that?" O'Neill asked, already knowing the answer from her slight smile. "Already am. Against regulations, of course." She gestured to a neural interface headset. "Your squadron's up for patrol in 2 hours. Want to try something crazy?" The modified fighter interface felt natural. Too natural. Every system linked directly to O'Neill's neural patterns, responding to his thoughts like an extension of his body. Just like the VR rigs he'd trained on since childhood, but with actual weapons and no respawn points. They discovered how well it worked when 4 Arcturi ships ambushed his patrol. O'Neill's squadron scattered, but he stayed, his modified systems feeding combat data directly into his brain. The aliens' movements were patterns. Patterns could be learned, predicted, countered. His first kill came as naturally as scoring a headshot in the games he played. The second followed when he used a maneuver that would have been impossible for human reflexes alone. The other 2 Arcturi ships retreated, presumably to report encountering something their tactical computers couldn't categorize. Fleet Command couldn't ignore the combat footage. Within days, the Gamers Squadron was born. Elite pilots, all with competitive gaming backgrounds, all fitted with Wong's illegal but effective neural interfaces. O'Neill found himself training other pilots, teaching them to think like gamers while flying like soldiers. "The Arcturi aren't running on creativity," he explained. "They're running on programs, complex ones, but still predictable if you know what to look for." Their first major victory came during the Europa evacuation. 12 civilian ships, loaded with refugees from Jupiter's moons, were sitting ducks for an Arcturi assault force. The Gamers Squadron was the only unit close enough to respond. "Remember," O'Neill told his pilots as they engaged, "they're not invincible. They're just really well-programmed NPCs. And what do we do with NPCs? We learn their patterns, and we break their code." His squadron responded in unison. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Human pilots, their brains linked directly to their fighters, moving with impossible precision while maintaining the creativity and unpredictability that machines couldn't match. For every pattern the Arcturi tactical computers generated, the humans had seen something similar in countless games. For every perfect maneuver, there was a counter that only an organic mind would consider. When it was over, 11 of the 12 civilian ships had escaped. The Arcturi had lost 15 vessels. The Gamers' squadron lost 2 pilots. Tragic, but a miracle considering the odds they'd faced. In the debriefing room, Admiral Chen herself appeared on the video screen. "Lieutenant O'Neill," she said, "I'm not sure whether to promote you or court-martial you for unauthorized modifications to fleet equipment." O'Neill stood at attention. "Whatever serves Earth best, Admiral." "The brass isn't happy about using untested neural tech in combat," she continued. "But they can't argue with results. Dr. Wong is being transferred to a new research division. You're being promoted to captain. I want this program expanded. Every pilot who can handle the neural load, I want them trained your way." O'Neill saluted, but Chen wasn't finished. "One more thing, Captain. The Arcturi are adapting their tactics. They're learning. Are you sure your gaming experience will be enough?" He smiled. "With respect, Admiral, gamers have been adapting to learning AI for centuries. It's literally what we do for fun. The Arcturi want to fight a war using computer logic against human gamers. I nearly feel bad for them." As if to prove his point, a priority alert flashed across the command screens. Another Arcturi attack force had been detected. Without waiting for orders, the Gamers' squadron was already running to their ships. The learning curve was steep, but humanity was catching up. And they had a few cheat codes the Arcturi hadn't counted on. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood before the Fleet Command Council, her presentation displaying the swirling orange atmosphere of Saturn's largest moon. "Titan isn't just a strategic location," she argued. "It's our best chance to strike back at the Arcturi where they least expect it." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "You're proposing to hide an assault fleet in liquid methane." "Exactly." Rodriguez switched to a simulation. "My team has been studying Titan's hydrocarbon seas for years. The methane lakes are perfect for masking our energy signatures. The Arcturi can't detect what they can't distinguish from the background." "And our ships?" a council member asked. "The cold alone would kill any crew." Rodriguez smiled. "That's where my archaeological research comes in. Before the war, I specialized in extreme environment adaptation. We've modified 3 corvettes with methane-resistant hulls. The crews will be in suspended animation, protected from the cold. We can hide under Titan's seas indefinitely." The council chambers erupted in argument. It was suicide, some said. Brilliant but impossible, others argued. Chen silenced them with a raised hand. "How many ships do you need?" 3 corvettes, 12 fighters, and 1 carrier for backup. Rodriguez answered immediately. "Small enough to hide, large enough to hurt them." Chen studied her for a long moment. "You have 48 hours to prove this can work. After that, I'm either giving you a fleet or a court-martial for wasting our time." The modified ships looked more like deep-sea submersibles than space vessels. Rodriguez watched her engineering team make final adjustments to the methane shielding. The crews were already in their suspended animation pods, protected from the -179 degrees Celsius temperatures they'd face. "Final checks complete," her chief engineer reported. "We're as ready as we'll ever be." Rodriguez nodded. "Launch sequence in 5 minutes. Remember, once we're under, we'll be blind until we surface. Timing has to be perfect." The descent into Titan's largest methane sea was like entering another world. Their ship's external cameras showed a murky orange landscape, perpetual hydrocarbon rain falling from above. They settled into the liquid methane, their systems powered down to minimal levels. Hours passed, then days. Rodriguez monitored the Arcturi patrol patterns from their hidden position. But something was wrong. The alien ships weren't just guarding Titan. They were mining something. "Look at these readings," she told her science officer. "They're drilling into the moon's core." Whatever they're after, it's old. Really old. The decision nearly tore her apart. Their original mission was simple: wait for the Arcturi to lower their guard, then launch a surprise attack on their base. But this discovery could change everything. "Prep the dive team," she ordered. "We're going to find out what they're looking for." The dive was perhaps the most dangerous mission ever attempted by human forces. Their suits, modified for methane immersion, felt clumsy and alien. Rodriguez led her team through the murky liquid toward the Arcturi drilling site. What they found changed the course of the war. Ancient structures, clearly artificial but neither human nor Arcturi in origin, lined the walls of the drilling shaft. The aliens were extracting some kind of technology, crystalline matrices similar to their ship designs, but far older. They didn't develop their tech, Rodriguez realized, recording everything. They found it. Here. An alarm shrieked in her comm. "Captain, Arcturi ships incoming. They've detected our probe." Rodriguez cursed. "All ships, emergency surface protocol. Launch as soon as you break liquid." To her dive team. "Back to the ship now." What followed was a deadly game of hide and seek through Titan's hydrocarbon seas. Arcturi energy weapons superheated the methane, creating massive gas explosions that their ships had to dodge. Rodriguez's fleet used the chaos to their advantage, surfacing only to fire before diving again. "They're protecting something in that shaft," she told her crew. "New mission objectives. We're taking those artifacts. Prepare boarding teams." The battle lasted 6 hours. 3 Arcturi ships destroyed, 2 damaged. 1 human corvette lost with all hands. But they secured their prize, a cache of ancient technology that would eventually help turn the tide of war. In her report to Admiral Chen, Rodriguez wrote, "The Arcturi's greatest advantage was never their technology. It was our assumption that they'd developed it themselves. We now know better. They're using borrowed power. And humanity. We adapt. We innovate. We make things our own. That's an advantage they'll never have." The Titan gambit had worked, just not in the way anyone had expected. As Rodriguez watched her teams unload the recovered artifacts, she couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best victories come from asking why, not just how. Admiral Sarah Chen had faced down Arcturi warships without flinching, but the alien delegation before her made her distinctly uncomfortable. The collective's representatives weren't hostile. They were worse. They were helpful. "Of course, Earth needs defense technology," the Moravian delegate said, his translucent tentacles rippling with sympathetic colors. "We offer this freely, with only minor considerations." Chen studied the schematics floating in the holographic display. Shield systems far beyond Earth's capabilities. Weapons that could match Arcturi firepower. Everything humanity desperately needed, gift-wrapped and presented with unsettling eagerness. "The considerations?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. "Oversight," the Moravian answered. "Advisory positions in your military command. Quality assurance of human technological development. Minor things." Her new aide, Lieutenant Kira Nash, shifted slightly beside her. Chen had noticed little things about Nash over the past weeks. 2 perfect posture, 2 precise movements. Now she caught a barely perceptible shake of the head. "Earth appreciates the collective's generous offer," Chen replied carefully. "We'll need time to review the terms." Back in her office, Chen activated every anti-surveillance measure she had before turning to Nash. "How long have you been undercover?" Nash didn't bother denying it. 3 months. I represent interested parties who prefer humanity remains independent. Why? Because the collective isn't helping you out of kindness. They're terrified. Nash pulled out a data crystal. Your hybrid neural link fighters. Your adaptations of Arcturi tech. You're doing in months what took other species centuries. They want to control your development before you surpass them. Chen considered having Nash arrested. Instead, she asked, "Why tell me this now?" "Because in about 10 minutes, you'll receive news that 3 of Earth's top scientists have been assassinated. The collective doesn't just want to help you. They want to help you in very specific ways. The report came in exactly 8 minutes later. Chen looked at Nash with new respect. What's your real agenda? I represent the orphans, species who rejected collective control. We've been watching, waiting for someone else to break their monopoly on technological advancement. Humanity might be that chance. Over the next weeks, Chen found herself playing a dangerous game. Publicly, she negotiated with the collective, appearing to consider their offers. Privately, she worked with Nash to uncover a conspiracy spanning centuries. The assassinations continued. Earth's most innovative researchers died in accidents. But Nash's warning had helped Chen prepare. Key scientists were already hidden, continuing their work in secret facilities. The breakthrough came during a diplomatic reception. Chen noticed the Moravian delegate's tentacles displaying colors she'd never seen before when discussing Rodriguez's Titan discoveries. She immediately contacted Captain Rodriguez. The artifacts you found, Chen said urgently. Could they be used to track similar technology? Yes, Rodriguez answered slowly. We've been detecting resonance patterns. Admiral, are you suggesting? Search everywhere the collective has ships stationed. I need to know if they're using the same tech source as the Archery. The results confirmed their suspicions. The collective's advanced technology shared the same basic patterns as Archery systems. They weren't just afraid of human development. They were afraid humans would discover their secret. Chen confronted the Moravian delegate with the evidence. You found your technology the same way the Archery did. But humanity, we're building ours. Creating something new. That's what terrifies you. The delegate's skin turned ash gray. You don't understand. There are rules. Patterns. The predecessor's technology is meant to be found, not changed. Not merged with primitive neural interfaces. Not adapted. What you're doing is dangerous. No, Chen corrected. What we're doing is human. And if that scares you, remember, you tried to kill our scientists. To control our development. Ask the Archery how well trying to control humanity works out. The diplomatic crisis that followed reshaped the war. The collective's attempts to control Earth backfired spectacularly. When news of the assassinations leaked, other species began questioning their own relationships with the ancient trading alliance. Nash's orphans emerged from hiding, offering their own technological insights, innovations they'd managed to develop in secret. Earth became a beacon for species tired of finding and following, ready to start creating. They never understood. Chen told Nash as they watched Earth's first independently developed faster-than-light drive being installed in a warship. Humanity's strength isn't in copying what we find. It's in making it our own. The collective had wanted to prevent humanity's uncontrolled advancement. Instead, they'd caused exactly what they feared. A revolution in how species viewed technological development. The ripples would soon become waves, and the waves would reshape the galaxy. Captain James O'Neill stared at his neural interface display in disbelief. Play it again, he ordered. The intercepted transmission repeated. Legio XIA, Gemina, requesting support. Per aspera ad astra. Roma Eterna. Ancient Latin, being broadcast from an Archery ship. O'Neill had studied enough history to recognize the call sign of the 13th Legion. But that was impossible. The Roman legions had vanished from Earth over 2,000 years ago. All ships maintain radio silence, he commanded his squadron. We're following that signal. They tracked the transmission deep into Archery space, using their neural interfaces to navigate through patrol zones that should have been impossible to penetrate. The source led them to a star system that didn't appear on any map. What they found there defied explanation. A fleet of ships unlike anything they'd seen before, part Archery crystal technology, part ancient Roman design aesthetic. On their hulls, Latin phrases written in gold. SPQR. Senatus Populusque Romanus. By all the gods of Olympus, a voice crackled over their comms in perfect Latin. You're from Earth. The Star Romans, as O'Neill's crew quickly dubbed them, had a story that read like science fiction. 2,000 years ago, the predecessors, the same ancient race that had left technology for the Arcturi to find, had taken several Roman legions through a portal in space, not for war, but for preservation. They collected species they thought had potential, explained centurion Marcus Aurelius Constantine, named after a long line of emperors. The predecessors saw something in our military discipline, our adaptability. They gave us technology, expecting us to use it their way. Instead, we combined it with our own methods. O'Neill's squadron was led to a hidden base carved into an asteroid. Roman architecture merged seamlessly with advanced technology. Legionaries in powered armor carried energy spears alongside plasma rifles. We've been fighting the predecessors ever since we realized their true nature, Constantine continued. They don't preserve species, they collect them. Study them. The Arcturi are just their latest proxies. The Star Romans had spent centuries developing ways to combat the predecessors' technology. They'd learned that the ancient race relied entirely on predictable patterns, mathematical precision. Roman tactical flexibility, combined with stolen technology, had kept them alive and fighting. Your neural interface systems, Constantine observed, studying O'Neill's fighter. Ingenious. We developed something similar, based on our own military traditions. Perhaps we can learn from each other. The next weeks were intense. O'Neill's pilots trained with Roman space legionaries, learning techniques developed over centuries of guerrilla warfare against a technologically superior foe. In return, they shared Earth's latest innovations. Your gaming-based combat systems are brilliant, Constantine admitted. We've been too focused on traditional military doctrine, but you found a way to turn entertainment into a weapon. The exchange of knowledge proved vital when a predecessor probe discovered their location. O'Neill's squadron fought alongside Roman ships in a battle that combined classical tactics with mural-linked space combat. Testudo formation. Constantine ordered as predecessor energy beams sliced through space. His ships interlocked their shield systems in the same way Roman legionaries had once overlapped their scutums. O'Neill's pilots used their gaming-honed reflexes to exploit gaps in the enemy's perfect formations. Break their pattern, he commanded. Make them fight chaos. The probe was destroyed, but they knew more would come. O'Neill prepared his squadron for the return journey to Earth, carrying data crystals full of Roman combat techniques and technology. Tell Admiral Chen everything, Constantine instructed. The predecessors won't stop with the Arcturi. Earth needs to be ready. Before leaving, O'Neill asked the question that had bothered him since arrival. Why keep broadcasting in Latin? Why take the risk? Constantine smiled. Hope. Hope that Earth had survived. Hope that our descendants had reached the stars. Roma Aeterna isn't just words, Captain. It's a promise that humanity, in all its forms, endures. O'Neill looked at his neural interface, then at the Roman ships with their golden letters. Humanity had taken different paths to the stars, but they'd arrived at the same conclusion. The future belonged to those who could adapt the old to create the new. As his squadron jumped back toward Earth, O'Neill composed his report to Admiral Chen. We're not alone, he wrote, and we've never been the first humans to fight this war, but we might be the last ones needed to win it. Captain Maya Rodriguez had expected many things when studying the Titan artifacts. Technological breakthroughs, military advantages. What she hadn't expected was to fall in love with the enemy. Dr. Vextan, the Arcturi scientist who'd made contact through encrypted channels, had initially just been a source of information. The crystalline beings weren't naturally hostile. They'd been engineered that way. Our genetic code was rewritten by the predecessors, Vextan explained during one of their clandestine meetings in a neutral system. His crystalline form shifted colors as he spoke, a trait Rodriguez found increasingly fascinating. We were designed to be perfect soldiers. Logical, unified, unwavering. Rodriguez studied his molecular structure through her scanner. But you're different. You're questioning their programming. Because of you. His colors shifted to a deep blue. Embarrassment. She'd learned. Humans adapt technology. Make it your own. We observe your neural interfaces, your hybrid ships. You change what you touch, including us. Their secret research project started as pure science. Rodriguez provided human genetic samples. Vextan analyzed how human DNA responded to the same crystalline technologies that had transformed his species. But something unexpected happened. Human genetic code didn't just resist the predecessor's programming. It overrode it. Where Arcturian DNA had been made rigid and unchanging, human DNA was naturally adaptable. It was evolutionary chaos versus engineered order. Your species evolved on a planet that tried to kill you every day. Vextan marveled. Your genetic code doesn't accept limitations. It breaks them. Their meetings became longer, more frequent. Rodriguez found herself fascinated by his brilliant mind, his growing capacity for independent thought. Vextan was equally intrigued by her emotional responses, so different from Arcturian logic. Then came the breakthrough. During one analysis, Vextan's crystalline structure briefly destabilized. When it reformed, something had changed. His colors shifted in patterns Rodriguez had never seen before. "I feel different," he said, wonder in his usually monotone voice. "The rigid pathways in my mind, they're becoming fluid, like yours." The implications were staggering. Contact with human genetic patterns wasn't just affecting Vextan's thoughts. It was rewriting his species' programming at a fundamental level, breaking the chains the predecessors had placed in their DNA. "This has to spread," Vextan declared. "My people deserve to choose their own path." The research became a revolution. Vextan secretly shared their findings with other Arcturian scientists. The effect cascaded through their crystalline communication networks. Ships began disappearing from Arcturian battle groups, their crews awakening to individual thought. But freedom came with a price. The predecessors' failsafes triggered in some Arcturian, driving them to violent madness. Battles erupted between awakened ships and those still bound by their programming. Rodriguez received an urgent transmission from Vextan. "They're hunting us. The loyal ones. They can sense the changes in our crystalline matrices. My research facility. We need immediate evacuation." She didn't hesitate. Without waiting for authorization, Rodriguez took her ship deep into Arcturian space. The rescue mission became a firefight as loyal Arcturian vessels discovered them. "This is Captain Rodriguez to all awakened Arcturian ships," she broadcast. "Earth offers asylum to any who choose freedom. You don't have to be what they made you." The battle that followed would be remembered as the Crystal Schism. Awakened Arcturian ships fought alongside Rodriguez's vessel, their newly discovered emotions lending passion to their precise tactics. They protected the research facility's evacuation even as their former comrades tried to destroy it. Vextan's facility was saved, but the war had entered a new phase. The Arcturian weren't just fighting humans now, they were fighting themselves, and the predecessors would soon realize their perfect soldiers were breaking free. In her report to Admiral Chen, Rodriguez included something personal. The Arcturian aren't just aliens anymore. They're people fighting for their right to change, to feel, to choose. And if there's one thing humanity knows how to do, it's fighting for freedom. Chen's response was simple. "Love makes for strange allies, Captain, but it also makes for the strongest ones. Keep your scientists safe. His revolution might just win us this war." Rodriguez looked at the data crystal Vextan had given her, containing his personal genetic key, an Arcturian's most private possession. In their species terms, it was more intimate than a marriage proposal. She smiled, knowing that some boundaries were meant to be broken. The revolution in the ranks had begun, and like everything else humans touched, it would reshape the galaxy in ways the predecessors had never imagined. The predecessors emerged from their ancient hiding places with technology that seemed to break physics itself. Their ships didn't just move through space. They rewrote it. Reality distorted around them like a dream. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display as another Earth fleet vanished into a dimensional pocket, trapped in a moment of frozen time. The casualties were beyond devastating. The combined human archery resistance was being systematically dismantled. "Show me the pattern analysis again," she ordered, studying the holographic battle reconstructions. Something was nagging at her tactical instincts. The predecessors were overwhelming them. Yes, but their movements were perfect, she whispered. Too perfect. The revelation hit her like a pulse blast. The predecessors didn't improvise. Every impossible maneuver, every reality-warping attack followed complex but predictable patterns. They were running on pure logic, and logic could be understood. Chen called an emergency meeting of Earth's best pattern analysts, Captain O'Neill's gaming experts, Captain Rodriguez's archery scientists, the Star Roman's tactical historians. Each group had fought the predecessors differently, seen different aspects of their perfection. "They're not adapting to us," Chen explained, showing battle footage. "They're executing pre-programmed responses, sophisticated ones, but still programmed. Every counter to every tactic we've tried was planned millennia ago. Like playing against a computer that's seen every possible game," O'Neill added, his neural interface glowing as he processed the data. "They're not thinking. They're following their code." Rodriguez's partner, Vex 10, shifted his crystalline form thoughtfully. "The predecessors engineered my species to be perfect soldiers. They must see themselves as perfect beings. Perhaps perfection is their weakness." Chen's plan was audacious to the point of insanity. She would use civilian ships as bait, drawing out the predecessors' full arsenal of responses. Each ship would try something different. Tactics from every human culture, every alien species that had joined their cause. "We need to force them to show us everything," she told her commanders. "Every response, every pattern. Perfect beings don't hide their perfection." They demonstrated. The battle that followed was a calculated sacrifice. Civilian ships, volunteered by their crews, performed seemingly random maneuvers. Each predecessor response was recorded, analyzed, mapped. The cost in lives was horrific, but the data they gathered was priceless. Analysis revealed the truth. The predecessor's technology didn't break physics. It followed higher mathematical laws, laws that could be predicted if you had enough data. Their perfect tactical responses created patterns within patterns, fractals of strategy that repeated at every scale. Here, Chen showed her staff, highlighting a sequence. "They respond to chaos with absolute order. If we can predict their ordering pattern, we can break it," O'Neill finished. "Like finding the rhythm in a game's AI and disrupting it." The key was human intuition. The predecessors' responses were based on perfect mathematical models, but humans could sense patterns without understanding them. Gut feelings, hunches, the illogical leaps that had helped humanity survive. Chen ordered a daring strike at the predecessor's command node. Her flagship would be sacrificed, but if their analysis was correct, they could disrupt the perfect patterns that governed predecessor tactics. "All ships, execute Protocol 0, she commanded as they engage. Protocol 0 wasn't a real strategy. It was controlled chaos. Every ship acted on its commander's instincts, creating a battle pattern too random for the predecessor's perfect minds to process. The predecessor ships faltered, their reality-warping technology creating contradictory effects as they tried to impose order on chaos. Chen watched her tactical display light up with opportunities, gaps in their perfect defenses. "Now," she ordered, "all ships, fire on these coordinates." The combined fleet struck from multiple vectors, their attacks deliberately uncoordinated. Star Roman ships broke formation in ways that defied military logic. Archery vessels ignored their crystalline programming. Human neural interfaces introduced random variables into every calculation. Chen's flagship took devastating damage, but their strikes hit home. The predecessor command node, unable to impose order on the chaos surrounding it, suffered a catastrophic failure. Its reality-warping field collapsed, taking several nearby ships with it. As her bridge filled with smoke and emergency sirens, Chen sent one final transmission to Earth. "Perfect order can't survive perfect chaos. Remember that. It's how we'll win this war. The battle proved that the predecessors could be beaten. Their perfect tactics were their greatest weakness, an inability to comprehend or adapt to genuine chaos. The war wasn't over, but humanity had found the key to victory. Chen was rescued from her crippled flagship, burned but alive. In the medical bay, she looked at the tactical recordings of the battle. The patterns were beautiful in their complexity, but the chaos that broke them was beautiful too. Perfection, she mused through pain-dulled lips, is just another word for being done changing. And humanity, we're never done changing. The Sol system had never seen a fleet like this before. Earth ships with their hybrid technology. Star Roman vessels bearing golden SPQR insignias. Freed Arcturi cruisers glowing with crystalline light. Even a contingent of collective defectors, their ships proudly displaying new alliance markers. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on her new flagship's bridge, scars from the previous battle still healing. All commands, report status. Gamers squadron ready. Captain O'Neill responded. His neural-linked fighters had been upgraded with Star Roman temporal shields, allowing human reflexes to match predecessor reality warping. Research division standing by. Captain Rodriguez called in. Beside her, Vex-Tan's crystalline form pulsed with anticipation. Their combined research had given the Allied fleet weapons that could disrupt predecessor control signals. Legio XII Gemina awaits your command. Centurion Constantine's voice carried 2,000 years of Roman military tradition, now adapted for this final battle. The predecessor fleet emerged from hyperspace like a wave of structured reality. Their ships moved with mathematical precision, each position calculated to perfect coordinates. But this time, the Allies were ready. Execute Operation Chaos, Chen ordered. The battle that followed would be studied for centuries. Human neural interfaces introduced random variables into every engagement. Star Roman ships used ancient flanking maneuvers that predated the predecessors' tactical databases. Freed Arcturi vessels ignored their crystalline programming, fighting with newfound emotion and creativity. They're trying to establish pattern dominance, O'Neill reported, his squadron dancing through reality distortions, just like in the simulations. Counter-pattern Alpha. His fighters broke formation in ways that defied tactical logic, their human pilots relying on gaming-honed instincts. The predecessors' perfect responses began to falter, their reality warping technology creating contradictory effects. Rodriguez's ship dove through a dimensional rift, Vex-Tan's calculations guiding them. Disruption field activated. The weapon they'd developed using hybrid human Arcturi science fired, sending waves of chaos through the predecessor's crystalline networks. Now, Constantine, Chen commanded. The Star Roman fleet executed a maneuver that would have made their ancient ancestors proud. Ships moved in traditional testudo formation, but at speeds and angles that should have been impossible. Their temporal shields absorbed the predecessors' attacks while their modified ballistas, an ancient weapon redesigned with modern technology, fired gravitational harpoons that anchored enemy vessels in normal space. All ships implement randomized protocols, Chen ordered. Every vessel in the Allied fleet began behaving uniquely, creating a battle pattern too chaotic for the predecessors' perfect minds to process. The turning point came when the predecessor command ship attempted to impose order through a massive reality warping field. But order, they had learned, was no match for human unpredictability. The field collapsed in on itself, taking a third of the predecessor fleet with it. All ships pressed the advantage. Chen's voice carried the weight of humanity's long fight for survival. Show them why Earth never learned to surrender. The battle lasted 12 hours. When it ended, the predecessor fleet was in ruins, their perfect formations shattered by the combined might of species they had tried to control or destroy. The cost had been heavy. Hundreds of Allied ships lost, thousands of lives sacrificed. But the victory was absolute. In the aftermath, Chen stood in the observation dome of Earth's orbital command station. Below, the first ships of a new fleet were being constructed. Not warships this time, but exploration vessels. The predecessors thought perfection meant the end of growth. She told the assembled leaders of the Alliance. They created the Arcturi to be perfect soldiers. They collected the Star Romans to preserve their martial spirit unchanged. They tried to force the collective worlds to develop along predetermined paths. She gestured to the ships below. But humanity's strength was never in perfection. It was in our drive to change, to adapt, to become more than we were. And now, that strength has given others the courage to choose their own paths. The first diplomatic fleet launched a week later. Ships of every allied species, crewed by beings who had chosen evolution over stagnation. They carried a message to the galaxy. The age of enforced perfection was over. The time had come for chosen change. O'Neill's Gamers squadron provided escort. Their neural interfaces now standard equipment across the fleet. Rodriguez and Vextan led the scientific contingent, their continued research promising new breakthroughs in combining technologies. The Star Romans sent their own ships, ready to reconnect with the galaxy they had hidden from for 2 millennia. As Chen watched them depart, she remembered that first battle at Neptune, when humanity had seemed hopelessly outmatched. They had come so far, not by becoming perfect, but by remaining defiantly, creatively human. "We don't do defeat," she whispered, echoing her words from the war's beginning. But now she added, "And we don't do perfect either. We do better." The fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the courage to change. The war was over. The real adventure, exploring a universe free from the constraints of enforced perfection, was just beginning. For in the end, humanity's greatest victory hadn't been defeating the predecessors. It had been showing the galaxy that imperfection, adaptation, and change were not weaknesses to be corrected, but strengths to be celebrated. The undefeated had become the unleashed, and the stars themselves seemed brighter for it.